We need to give him a glass of water. He's sweating a lot over there.
I hope that's not the case.
We'll go ahead and get the meeting going here for January 22nd of 2026. Happy New Year to all. I hope you had a good Christmas and New Year. Now it's back to business. I need approval of the agenda. A motion for approval of the agenda.
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? So moved. Looks like, according to the list, we're going to do the Length of Service Award next for Dwayne Young for 5 years. Dwayne, come on up, my friend.
Dwayne Young began his career at the Metropolitan Commission on December 28, 2020, as a meter technician. On July 1st, 2024, he was promoted to lead meter technician, his current position. Dwayne is the go-to guy for water meters and has trained several meter technicians while serving in the water division. When he is not at work, he enjoys spending time with his family, going to Maryland International Raceway, auto shows, and he can also be found working on his Chevy Malibu. Please join me in congratulating Dwayne Young on his 5 years of service to the Metropolitan Commission.
I know he's got some friends. Come on up and get in this picture, friends. He drives a Chevrolet. He's got to have some friends.
All right.
Congratulations, Dwayne.
And they left you all alone.
All righty, I need approval of the meeting minutes from the December 11th, 2025 regular session. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of December 11th, 2025.
I'll second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? So moved. Everybody get a chance to check out the consent agenda? If so, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? So moved. All right, moving on. I believe the first item is the fiscal year 27 draft capital improvement presentation. Am I correct on that?
No.
Designation of corporate treasurer.
You're looking at
I'm
the
sorry.
first item under continuing business.
My apologies. Yep. I got you. There we go. All right, George.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. In your packages, there's an informational memorandum dated January 14th, 2026. Basically describes two requirements associated with the corporate treasurer. One is the St. Mary's County Code requirement to post a bond for the treasurer that must be reviewed by the county attorney. And the second piece is in our corporate bylaws, which goes over the designation of the treasurer, how the commission appoints them, and who may be selected as an interim treasurer. As you may recall, back on June 18th, 2025, with the retirement of Patty Stigman, our former CFO, you designated myself as the interim treasurer. And there was a stipulation in your motion, which is consistent with our bylaws, that states that once the new chief financial officer has been selected and has successfully fulfilled the 6-month probationary period in accordance with section 4.2.3 of corporate bylaws, we may bring that forward to you, and then I can transfer that power, that massive power, over to Sean Buffet. So typically, the CFO is your corporate treasurer, but in an interim status, you can select anyone you want, and you selected myself. It's not been a very difficult process. So we have a motion in your packages that basically starts the process again. What we'll do is we'll get a corporate bond in the name of Sean Buffet. That'll get forwarded to the county attorney's office. Mine will not lapse until his is approved. Once it's approved, he'll get sworn in at the clerk of the court's office, and then it'll be official. And then my bond will then be retired. So that's it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Sounds like standard operating procedure.
It has worked that way the past few times, yes, sir.
So we do have a motion in your packets.
I'll read it. Move that the commission appoint LaShawn L. Bethea as the corporate treasurer of the St. Mary's County Metropolitan Commission in accordance with section 4.2.3 of the corporate bylaws of the St. Mary's County Metropolitan Commission. Further move that staff be authorized to forward the public official bond in the amount of $250,000 to be issued to LaShawn L. Bethea as the duly appointed corporate treasurer to the commissioners of the St. Mary's County for review and approval in accordance with section 113-1.e of the public local laws of St. Mary's County.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second. Any discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? So approved.
Thank you, commissioners.
There is.
Thank you, Sean.
We got you hooked now, okay?
You can't catch that, you know that. Just check it for the record.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today I have two items up for your consideration. The first of which is a Collection Systems Fiscal Year 2026 Rehabilitations Project. That is for the Wacomico Shores number 2 wastewater pump station. The Commission authorizes and approves various capital projects that serve to upgrade and prolong the service life of various infrastructure that the Commission operates. The Wacomico Shores number 2 pump station is located off of Army Navy Drive in Wacomico Shores and was placed into service in 1993 and has had several subsequent repairs completed since that time. The station currently serves approximately 90 properties up there in the Wacomico Shores neighborhood. The proposed rehabilitation work is expected to include installation of a new generator and a generator pad, and we've already purchased the generator. Grading and top coating the driveway to the station to improve drainage at the site and access to the site. We will also install a bypass pumping and force main isolation valve. This will allow for easier maintenance and could be used if the station were inoperable for some reason over a lengthy period of time. We will also install a new vacuum lift pump station on the existing wet well, and we've already purchased that system. This project was previously part of a combined public solicitation back in June of 2025, but with a single bid received for this particular project of $499,214. As such, the current quote is only about 4.5% over the guideline threshold of the $250,000 established in the emergency repairs and construction contract, and it is almost half of the previous bid. As such, I do believe that this approach remains the best value for this project, and therefore I'm requesting approval for this work. With that, I will take any questions.
I see you don't have the other quotes. Are you waiting for them, or
Excuse me?
the other quotes from Great Mills Trading Post?
Great Mills Trading Post did not submit a quote, just due to their workload, and I guess they had some labor issues. Hollywood Contracting also did not submit a quote. They had no other comment other than
Are you finding that happens a lot when we're not getting quotes anymore? Or is this just an isolated thing where there's only one? I know we've had some before, but what is you see any trends?
Historically, I don't think the Trading Post really submits many bids unless it's a fairly sizable project. Hollywood Contracting has submitted some bids. In fact, we used Hollywood last year for a water project.
Okay.
So it's just kind of unusual to only get one quote in from the
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
contractors here.
Are these the only three?
These are the only three that are on the contract. So we do have an emergency repairs and construction contract that is competitively bid. So we have AB&H, Trading Post, and Hollywood Contracting on that particular contract. The prior bid for $499 actually was a public solicitation. That was for Wacomico Shores 1 and 2, and I think combined they were like almost $900-some thousand, and I think we got that quote from Stormwater Management Solutions.
So we have gone to.
We do.
There is a motion then, if anybody would like to read that.
I can read that one. Move that the commission approve and authorize the rehabilitation and repair work at the Wacomico Shores Number 2 rehabilitation, project number 1241 SS, based on existing emergency repairs and scheduled construction, contract number 23-07-C, and request for quotes number RFQ 2026-04-C. Further move that the staff be authorized and directed to sign all documentations relating to this award, including but not limited to all approved change orders.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further questions, discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? So moved.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item up for your consideration is the purchase of the inflow and infiltration inspection van. The I&I staff respond to various maintenance and service and inspection calls around the clock, 365 days a year. This includes responses to sewer backups, sanitary sewer overflows, and other sewer-related complaints. The current I&I inspection van was procured in 2018 and is the third inspection van that the operations staff has owned and operated since early 2000s. The prior two vehicles were not purpose-built vehicles and were modified in-house by staff to hold all the necessary inspection and camera equipment. The current I&I van has approximately 80,000 miles and is programmed to be repurposed as a dedicated traffic control van for the balance of its useful service life. We utilize existing traffic control, the aero board, storage space, and the towing capacity to haul, deliver, and be positioned on site for routine and emergency events that require traffic control. Pending board approval, a new van is expected to be delivered in approximately 60 days and placed into service immediately. And with that, I will take any questions.
So with it having 80,000 miles, are you doing this because you kind of have a need anyway for the moving of
There's a need.
airboards and stuff versus waiting longer for it?
So originally the van was scheduled to be replaced next fiscal year. And there was a crane truck scheduled to be replaced this fiscal year. But with the cost increases in the crane trucks, I think we originally allocated like $180,000 for the crane trucks. They're pushing $200,000+ to get those outfitted the way we require them. There's not enough money to get that crane truck this year. However, we can move this, the I&I van purchase a year, move it up a year, and we would have the money to purchase it in the fiscal, or the capital budget.
And that's not gonna pinch you too bad in terms of the crane truck?
I like the idea that we're still going to use the old one. the traffic control and so.
There's been a lot of changes
Before
in
it dies.
the traffic regulations with the rumble strips that's one of the new things that we have to put out on the highways now. So it gets to be kind of burdensome to not have a purpose dedicated vehicle for that, for the cones and the arrow board and for the rumble strips as well.
Are you looking at having the money next year to get the crane truck next year?
Yeah.
There is a motion at the end of the package there. Somebody would like to read that?
I'll read it. I move that the commission accept and award the inflow and infiltration van purchase contract to Infrastructure Solutions Group Incorporated of Mechanicsville, Virginia, for pricing as submitted with their quote dated December 10th, 2025. And per terms, pricing and conditions of Sourcewell contract number 120721-EVS. Further, move to authorize and direct staff to sign all documentation relating to this contract, including but not limited to the issuance of approved purchase order and amendments.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any further questions or discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? So moved.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Ed. And now we're into the continuing business with the capital budget work session.
This may not be a work session. It's going to be fairly quickly. The first draft is fairly fundamental. What we'll do is we'll bring back from our December 11th meeting the assumptions going into the capital budget. We'll highlight some of the changes that we're thinking about, and we'll give you a rough idea of what we think that's going to do to our charges, our rates and charges. But this is more of the technical evaluation and a revalidation of where we're headed. The next round will be more of a Sean round, CFO round. That's when we start getting into the actual calculations of the numbers. So this is more of a feel comfortable going forward kind of moment. So if we could, on the first slide, I wanted you to recall from our December 11th meeting, several of the bullet points that we talked about regarding administrative assumptions and goals, but I only wanted to talk about 3 of them that I think are fairly important. The 5th bullet down talks about prioritizing projects that address the prevention of I&I and SSOs as they're related to the consent decree. That's been one of our goals over the past 3 years, but I wanted to read a letter to you that we just received from Maryland Department of the Environment, dated December 23rd. It said, discharge monitoring reports show a clear decline in annual average discharge flows, dropping from 3.63 MGD in 2022 to 3.08 MGD through November 2025. This trend indicates that METCOM's initiatives to reduce I&I are proving to be very successful. You don't normally get that kind of language from the state.
What was their motivation?
Their motivation was twofold. We don't have a lot of capacity left that's available for developers. We know that with all the money we've been putting in the I&I effort that we probably were gaining some capacity back, but we had to run the numbers to find out. You can run the numbers in-house all day long, but unless you get MDE's concurrence, it's not very helpful. So we have been able to secure, if you will, additional capacity, which would then stretch Marley Taylor out for the next 30 years as opposed to the next 10. With a $40 million project coming in with the next 10, you better start looking at a sinking fund that's fairly aggressive. And, we've approved 10% of our restricted reserves to go into a sinking fund for Marley Taylor, so we don't have to borrow that much in the end. We have now about 30 years of doing that. I think we'll be in great shape at that time. So we purposefully did this, and one of the justifications for the reduced flow is we showed them evidence that our I&I work was part and parcel to it. They just wanted to tie that back in. With the friendship that you develop over the years, you can sometimes ask them to do that as well. But typically MDE doesn't write that kind of language. So we're excited to see that the efforts of the operations department and all the work that you've approved on the capital side have paid off in the last 3 years. So that's really, really good stuff. Marley Taylor is the facility that treats a development district. The development district is what's growing. You don't have enough EDUs to go around, you got a problem. So we're in good shape for the foreseeable future, at least at Marley Taylor. Next item is maintain our current levels of new EDUs. EDUs are how we pay our past debt. 89 for water is our target. Sewer is 147. Currently, we are at 162 for water and 165 for sewer. That's great news. We don't see that as any kind of a trend. That just means we're going to collect more capital contributions than we thought, which puts us in a great position as far as our reserves of paying off our debt. So that's really all that does. But again, another positive piece that has come forward in the past year. Third bullet on this first slide, you want to utilize existing reserves to the full extent practical to help reduce borrowing. We went before the county commissioners with our DHCD loan on the 14th of January. Some commentary back and forth, but the only thing that seemed to make the Enterprise newspaper was this comment. The comment said, I think you've got a good plan. I think you've kept your ratepayers in mind as you've developed it, so we thank you for that. Point being, we came into the county commissioners with a request to borrow $36 million. One of the first questions was, well, you were here 2 years ago and borrowed money. How's that going? Well, we were 65% expended or drawn down. So we played that as you should from a business standpoint. We used the money that we were given before. We waited to borrow. This borrowing is a little bit more, but it's our consent decree projects and our joint projects with the county. They're all either 95% designed, they've been bid, or in the case of St. Clement Shores, you've tentatively awarded it and we're waiting for the state. So great shape with respect to the assumptions that we went into 2027. We're seeing the fruits of our labor so far. Back in December 11th, 2025, we also had some project highlights. One of them was revisit the timing of AMI metering technology. We captured 8,188 meters with the 3 gateway devices we purchased for $150,000. That's automatic read every 15 minutes. Huge. Very successful. One of the first thoughts was, should we then move this to be a little bit more aggressive? I think in-house we decided to see how it goes. We're in the winter, there's not a lot of foliage. Let's wait for the springtime. Let's see what the leaves do. Let's see if we still capture 8,100 meters with the same gateway devices. And also in the meantime, we received Leonardtown's as-built. They've got 3 towers in Leonardtown. We believe we can capture another 2,000 or 3,000 customers by putting a gateway on top of one of their towers. I talked to Lachelle at the town, their town administrator. She was completely open to us doing that as long as it didn't interfere with anything else they had planned. So we're doing a propagation study at no cost. Core in Maine, I think, is the group that does that, to see if that's not the next place we'd like to go. That's first piece. Second piece is support final funding of Southampton Water and Sewer System Phase 2. That application, or the funding for that, was included in our DHCD loan application that we took to the commissioners, so we are supporting the final funding for that project. The third bullet on this page, the reprogramming of funding for the exterior Petty building. We'll probably get into more discussion with that. We had planned a fairly large facility over at the Petty building site. The cost started to be fairly large. It was approaching $4 million. The primary purpose was really to get vehicles out of the weather, certain vehicles, especially the backcon trucks, because they have a tendency to freeze up in cold weather and they're inoperable. So we looked at that project and we've decided to do it by a pole barn, do it with a pole barn on the existing edge of our parking lot, as opposed to develop a new site that's adjacent to the existing building. However, with that site plan that's approved, we now have an approved site plan headed off into the future for any other type of needs we need. We can convert that into offices. We can reconsolidate these 2 buildings in 2035 if we'd like to. Gives us a lot of options. So the design we put into it didn't go to waste. We do have planning and zoning approval, but we're going to address the project by a pole barn about 1/4 the cost. So we're going to reprogram those monies into other projects, and we'll show you how we're doing that next time. On the sewer project side, Something fairly similar, we're reprogramming the funding for the exterior petty building upgrades. We're supporting the final funding for the Southampton project. The third item I wanted to point out on the sewer side was Forest Run wastewater pump station. We have $2.4 million programmed in 2027. There is a project coming forward, Stewart's Grant project. There's an opportunity there to do some cost sharing, which could reduce this project by about $1 million if the timing works out. So if the developer's needs are precursors of ours, we can have them toe the bulk of the line and just pay our portion of the cost for the upgrades. So we're still working on that. The smart thing to do is leave it at 2.4 million. And if we can save $1 million, that's great, but don't do that now because the developer project's not even designed. You know, it's in that early stages of discussion. I hate to subtract $1 million out of our 27 budget and then during the 27 fiscal year need that money to go forward. So we'll leave that in for now. Piney Point booster pump, only highlighting that because I wanted to thank Commissioner Gould again for getting us into the volunteer fire department. We had 2 meetings with them. We just received an email back that you promised they'd send, and we've replied to them. We need an easement from the volunteer fire department to put our booster pump. The fire department is, let's say, endorsed the concept, and I believe they're very supportive of it based on the presentation. So again, Commissioner Gould, thank you for that. Here's where we start getting into the numbers, but not quite yet. In FY26, you saw this picture. In fact, we presented it back in October and December, and it was part of our public hearing for the FY26 budget. We projected our capital contributions forward into 27 and 31. And based on my preliminary calculations of this year's capital budget, those numbers headed into 27 through 31 will be a little bit lower than we projected, so that's good. That simply means that we didn't borrow all that we thought we would borrow in 26, that we staggered that borrowing, but it will be a little bit lower. It's always nice when you can come in lower than what you projected the prior year. With respect to our monthly charges, which are system improvement charges, we projected that we would be in the neighborhood of $33, $34 a year. A month, as far as monthly charges for water and sewer to our customers. We've run some preliminary numbers with our draft CIB. Looks like it could be $2 or so more. To some, 34 versus 36 is not a lot, but on a percentage basis, some people get alarmed. When we come forward with you, or to you with our next draft, you may see these charges increase slightly, but hopefully we'll only be in the neighborhood of $2 or $3. And then on the third round, if we can adjust our projects to get them back down to where we projected, that's what we'll do. So we're still in the early stages there. What we included in your packages is something that we started last year. Instead of having to relook at the entire capital budget every single year, mostly you're concerned with probably what are the changes. We went through this last year, what are the changes? So what you'll see on each one of these sheets are blue arrows and highlighted yellow arrows. That either means, or highlighted boxes, that either means we made a timing or a cost adjustment to the CIB in its draft form. So on the first page, the timing changed for the Maryland 5, Maryland 246 waterline project because the state highway said they anticipated to give a notice to proceed in November this year, which means we have to be in a position to start paying our monthly charges to them. The other project is the Breton Bay Water System Replacement Project. It's time for phase 3 to roll onto the page. You'll see it rolls on to 2031 as a $4 million project, but we're already talking about doing what we did with phase 2. $4 million is a big hit. From a cash flow standpoint, you're not going to spend $4 million in 1 year. So we're going to split that into a phase 3A and 3B, and you'll see those costs over 2031 and 2032 as opposed to all in 31. It also helps level out your debt.
Would that possibly move to 2030?
Earlier?
Yeah.
Not the answer. The quick answer is you could, but phase 2 is not designed yet, nor constructed. So by the time that gets done, that gap's gonna get filled by active construction on the site. But absolutely, you could, but we would be in a position where we would have the authority in that year, but we wouldn't borrow for 2 years. So, great question, though. Third page, there's a change. We talked about the developer-funded project. We could reduce that by $1 million, but we're gonna leave it as is. Final page of our capital improvement budget sheets on water is the continuance of the vehicle replacement program. Mr. Hogan talked about that earlier. This is on the water side. There's vehicles also on the sewer side. The other line item here is the exterior petty building upgrade. And you can see $2 million on the water side, $2 million on the sewer side is being reduced to $250,000 on the water side, and $250,000 on the sewer side. So a lot of rescoping done there. We can go through this exercise, and since this is really the main thing left on the agenda, I'll do that if you don't mind. On the sewer side, you can see we made six basic changes. One of them, and Marley Taylor, is a climate resiliency report that's required as a part of our new permit. That was initially planned to be consulted out. We wrote that in-house. It wasn't that difficult, and Ed submitted that actually, I think, last week to the state. So there's no reason to have any money in there for consultant services when you can do it in-house. Next project on the list is the Piney Point Booster Pump Station, and we simply readjusted the budget to include land acquisition costs, which will be in the form of an easement with the Volunteer Fire Department. We changed the timing again for the Maryland 5, Maryland 246 project. It's listed twice because there are sewer impacts and water impacts. So we moved that timing up. We reallocated a portion of the funding from the exterior petty building to what? Manhole rehabilitation, because that's tied into I&I, which has been very successful. So if there's any opportunity to add more money into any project in sewer, it would be I&I, or inflow and infiltration. So we did that. And instead of it appearing in 2027 and 2028, we were able to spread that across the years. So I think that's a good use of money. We also added $250,000 in 2 of our consent decree projects, just as some additional contingency. We don't want to get into a point where there's an add or a deduct alternate when these things bid, or the bids come in slightly higher, and we don't have the ability to be responsive to that. So we added another $250,000 in 2027 as a just in case. That's about another 2 to 3% of contingency, if you will. So we think that's appropriate and reasonable. Final change is on the 3rd page of the sewer sheets, and that's the last $250,000 of contingency money for the Piney Point wastewater pump station upgrade, in case those bids come in a little bit higher than we anticipate. That project's a little bit strange because it's being bid with the water station at the same time. You never know how they're going to do the basic infrastructure costs, how the bidders are going to do that. So it could be that the water station's a little bit higher than it should be, or the sewer station's a little bit higher than it should be. We just want to make sure we have the flexibility of that when the bids do come in. Those are the changes in a nutshell, and if you just look at the yellow highlights on those sheets, we're not making a lot of adjustments or suggesting a lot of adjustments. The biggest changes are probably those projects that roll onto the screen or onto the page in 2032. Our debt limit is going to be something that we're going to look at very closely as well. Our debt outstanding is shown in red. We retire our debt at about $9 million per year, $8 to $9 million a year. The blue lines represent new debt. What that basically is the entire CIB in each year, assuming you borrow all of that in each of the CIB years. As you know, we don't borrow all of our capital budget in any given year. But from a debt projection standpoint, we just make that assumption. Last year, because the consent decree projects were a big thing, one of the questions was about how much of these increases in charges associated with your consent decree projects. We highlighted those in orange, about $35 million worth of work tied into the next few years of CIB. So the consent decree did have an impact, primarily because the consent decree has a time certain. We have to have all the projects in the consent decree completed by 2033, which means they better be rolling several years before then. If it were up to us, we would probably have staggered those a little bit more and have that impact be significantly more gradual. But our hands are tied with respect to that. We will bring back a budget that keeps us within the 120 and 140 million target range. So we're going to stick to our guns. We have to move a couple of projects to the right, so be it. We want to make sure that every project we have associated with debt and charges is justifiable and is ready to be programmed in the budget. So considerations going into next year. We want to accelerate the Maryland State 5 project. We want to maintain the Southampton Water Rehabilitation Project timing with the county. We want to include the fiscal impact of a possible developer cost share agreement associated with Stewart's grant. We're going to prepare the mandated climate resiliency report in-house, so we don't have to incur any costs in 2027. We're going to ensure that the portion of the St. Clement Shores sewer extension project is removed from capital contribution charges. I don't know if you recall this, but we plan to extend the sewer at St. Clement Shores through a special taxing district. A special taxing district is strictly borne by the benefited properties in that subdivision or neighborhood, in that St. Clement Shores service area. It's not to be borne by all of new development in St. Mary's County. Capital contributions are evenly distributed to all new development in the county. So if you do a special taxing district, we want to make sure that those costs are removed from the calculations associated with everybody else, because this is a special benefit district. I think that was done, but the transition between Patty and Sean, I just want to make sure. We are not going to re-request Bay Restoration funding for the Piney Point Force Main, although it looked like we were eligible for $5 million. We were eligible last year and we didn't get it. We called the state. We asked them specifically, is there any point in us submitting again this year? They said, you're eligible. And we said, tell us why we were not recipients of that grant funding last year. And they said, although you were eligible, based on our point system, expansions and upgrades of wastewater treatment plants are weighted far more heavily than replacement of existing sewer lines. The likelihood of you getting grant monies is very low, but we can't say it's zero. We decided that we wouldn't re-request funding. It's a lot of paperwork to go through to find out no after your budget cycle. And last year we were guaranteed grant monies. We programmed this project with the assumption we'd get grant monies. We had to reprogram it and put debt service in the next year. We're not going to do that again this year. So, with respect to new EDUs,
Can I ask one question there?
yes, sir.
Just kind of a side note, so if they're more tending to give us the grants for expansions and stuff, could we tie the engineering piece of the Marley Taylor, which I know is down the road, but at least get the engineering going, that we could ask for grant money for that?
The construction is usually more, but yes, you have a potential to recoup. The good news about St. Clement Shores is it's that same source of funding. The state is working on trying to get Bay Restoration funding to be eligible for more than just expansion projects. So we've been taking full advantage of every opportunity we can to grab a hold of that money. So the answer to your question is yes for an expansion. But they also know it's not going to be until 2035 or further. We're doing the preliminary engineering report now because there's a piece of property adjacent to Marley Taylor that is available. We're not sure if the next large expansion going from 6 million gallons to 9 million gallons a day is going to require land acquisition. If it is, there's no other land that's not developed around that particular treatment plant. So the design that we're talking about in the near future is just a preliminary engineering report, not the actual design of the facility itself. That should be much closer to the actual construction.
Was there a possibility to address them it being a phased growth instead of whatever the 3 million or whatever it is? That does it make sense possibly to look at maybe there's some ways to only expand it by a third of that or whatever sooner than 15 years or whatever?
That'll be in the preliminary engineering report.
Okay.
We're going to look at that. So is it 6 to 12, 6 to 9, or can it be 6, 7, and 9
Right.
with just a change in pumps or a change in the infrastructure? The other thing about expansions is going from 6 to 9 may not gain us any bay restoration funds because it's already an ENR facility. So you're expanding your existing ENR facility. Most of that bay restoration funds are BNR facilities being transitioned to ENR facilities. So we'll have them look at that as part of the preliminary engineering report as well, the likelihood of getting funding from the state.
And are they digging in then to, I don't know what's going on in terms of the base with, they've been basically in a year now in terms of all their repairs and usage and stuff. Are they digging into that in terms of this study or not?
Not for the preliminary engineering report. They'll just look at inflow, and what we've seen is a large reduction in inflow from the base because of all the work that they're doing on the base. So they'll just look at inflow and outflow and growth projections. But we'll tie that piece in, the funding piece in as well. We'll also calculate the impact of implementing any of the recommendations that we've shown here today and come back with you with those capital contribution charges and system improvement charges. Our primary goal is to have those charges at or below what we projected. And if they're a little bit higher or substantially higher, to either be able to justify that to both this board and the citizens that we serve, or adjust our projects to get those prices back down. Finally, the debt graph, we'll update that and bring that to you again next time. And one of the things that we're going to consider is funding vehicle purchases. There was a comment made by the county commissioners. Their funding is a little bit different. They use pay-go or cash for their vehicles or fund balance. We showed our vehicles as being borrowed in the future as opposed to using reserves. We have projects where we are using our reserves. If it's one half a dozen or another, 190,000 here, 190,000 here, switch the two projects. It really doesn't matter whether vehicles are funded that way or not. The loan that we projected, the loan that we submitted to you and the county was a 10-year loan for vehicles and a 30-year loan for construction. So it's tomatoes or tomatoes. For the sake of argument, we're just going to show out your vehicle purchases using fund balance. Just easier. It's no different in terms of debt. It's just a perception. And if it's similar to how the county operates and it has no impact on us, there's no point in not making that change. We've done it both ways. That's it in a nutshell. It wasn't quite a work session, and I kind of rambled fairly quickly because it's all actually laid out. There's also an attachment, a fairly large attachment of every single capital budget sheet. And in those sheets, you'll notice there's red text. What that means is you saw the sheet last year, you read it last year, we made changes to it, and any change that was made, whether it's an apostrophe S or a list of eligible projects, are all on that sheet. So hopefully that will give you a way to go through actually all of the sheets in a quicker fashion than having to sit down and read every single one individually. That's what we have for you today. Again, it's not a work session. It was more of an FYI where we're headed, and hopefully it sounds like we're headed in the direction that you provided to us back in December. And there's no motion other than any additional direction or comments you might have, or any projects you'd like to see more detail on between now and the next meeting. I would be happy to share those with you.
Anybody got anything?
Yeah, we gave you a lot without giving you a lot verbally because it's fairly self-explanatory. So next month, we hope to bring to you a revised version of what you're seeing there with the actual calculations of our system improvement or capital contribution charges and our debt. And hopefully that will be sufficient enough that you'll be comfortable to give us direction to take it to the Planning Commission, which will be a publicly vetted process. And you'll still have one or two more opportunities to make some additional adjustments. And Sean's been working on the operating budget, so that's why we've been dualizing. So unless the board has any specific questions, that's all we have as far as the budget work session today.
Thank you, George. Sean? I think that's all we have for continuing business, am I correct?
And before we leave that, underneath your agendas, there's a memo about snow. That's all we've been hearing for the last week. That it's gonna be a big snow, large snow, a lot of ice. We're already planning for it, as is the county. I know Smecco is as well. In case anyone asks you, what is Metcom doing? We gave you a little briefing. It's about a page long of our preparations and our resources.
So plowing and salt in my driveway, part of that?
Not this year.
Wasn't in the budget. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mine says all the department heads are going to the islands. Probably must be the wrong memo. They whiz. Good luck to everybody this weekend. It could be very tough, but I know we can handle it.
Right, I think that's all we got. We need to, go into,
Future agenda items,
what's that?
future agenda items.
Oh, my apologies.
On your
You
paper, it's
have
all
an
on the
agenda
computer.
right in front of your computer, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. That was just too easy. Why are you making that right? So our future agenda items, the next tentative meeting date's gonna be February 26th of 2026, here at home in the main building. 3:00, be there, be square. Got commissioners' members' time. And any of the commissioners got any comments or concerns or questions? Not this time. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss litigation and potential litigation.
I'll make that motion to go into executive session to discuss litigation and potential litigation.
And I'll need a second. I have a second. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? So moved.
Is he doing it, or is it the same thing?
Yeah, good.
Oh, I can do it.
Once he's back, you ready? Okay. All right, we're back into regular session. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the stuff discussed in executive.
I'll move that the commission authorize staff to proceed as discussed in executive session.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, gentlemen? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? So moved. And last but not least, I need a motion to approve the meeting minutes from executive session of December 11th, 2025. Somebody would like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December 11th, 2025, executive session.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? So moved as well. Last thing I'll entertain a motion for is adjournment. Unless y'all want to stay.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this fine meeting today.
I'll second that.
I had a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion is moved as well. Thank you, Jim.